The interesting thing about her service in Congress is that she never served on the Intelligence Committee. She had no experience in the military with intelligence matters, which makes her uniquely unqualified later to become the Director of National Intelligence. Indeed, the only interest she demonstrated on intelligence matters as a House member was her interest in Edward Snowden, who was indicted for leaking classified documents and who has now obtained refuge under Putin in Moscow.
Senator Adam Schiff weighed in on Tulsi Gabbard's record, expressing concerns about her foreign policy positions and past statements. He questioned whether her views align with the responsibilities of an intelligence secretary, casting doubt on her qualifications for the role. Agree or disagree with his take? Share your thoughts in the comments.
Today we're going to focus on Tulsi Gabbard. What is the background of Tulsi Gabbard? What kind of a job is she doing as a Director of National Intelligence? So Tulsi Gabbard originally served in the Hawaii State Legislature and in the National Guard. She was elected to Congress back in 2012. She was a very strong supporter of Edward Snowden and believed the charges against him should be dropped. But apart from that, not much of a notable record on intelligence matters. Her most distinguishing feature as a House member, though, was her fondness for dictators, and one in particular, Bashar al-Assad. In 2015, she makes a congressional trip to the Turkish border of Syria. Syria is immersed in a civil war at the time. And her guide tells the story of introducing Tulsi Gabbard to two young children. These children were orphaned when Bashar al-Assad ordered the aerial bombardment of the town in which they lived. The children had been burned, the parents had been killed. She's introduced to the kids. You would think on the natural she would express some sympathy as they told their story, these two young children, of their loss and how Bashar al-Assad had bombed her village. You would think that as a human matter she would inquire into their well-being. Well, none of that is what took place. Instead, Tulsi Gabbard asked these kids, how do you know it was Assad? How do you know it wasn't ISIS? Well, for one thing, ISIS doesn't have planes, but it demonstrated her willingness to ignore the obvious when it came to her predetermined views of the dictator Bashar al-Assad. In fact, the interlocutor there, the guide there, said that she wasn't ignorant. It was his impression, rather, that she was in a position that was adversarial to the United States. His impression was of someone adversarial to the United States. Now, 2 years later, she would go back to the region. This time she would go to Syria, and she would meet with Bashar al-Assad. In fact, she had two meetings in the space of a very short time in the country with Assad, one of them lasting potentially 3 hours long. She came out of those meetings and described how Bashar al-Assad wants to be seen as a person who wouldn't do such things as gas his own people. The problem was he had gassed his own people. He was already at that point understood to be a war criminal, and there is Tulsi Gabbard giving him a propaganda coup by meeting with him repeatedly and extolling his virtues after that meeting. Now, it wasn't just her defense of Bashar al-Assad, that bizarre defense of that dictator gassing his own people, that rose people's eyebrows, but also her fondness for the dictator in the Kremlin and her willingness to essentially blame the United States, blame NATO, blame Ukraine for the Russian invasion of Ukraine. She spread the false Kremlin talking point that the U.S. had placed biolabs in Ukraine, and this is why Russia was necessary. It was necessary for Russia to make war against Ukraine, to deal with the U.S. funded, operated, or whatnot biolabs. The only problem, it was a total fiction, just total Kremlin falsehood. So a couple years after her meeting with Assad, Tulsi Gabbard decides she's going to run for president in 2020. And here's a clip of her during one of the debates, at least as portrayed by Saturday Night Live.
Thank you, Rachel. What an honor it is to be on this stage with my fellow candidates. I want you to know that I smell your fear and it makes me stronger. I'm wearing the white suit of your fallen hero, Hillary Clinton. Now fight me, cowards.
She loses the presidential race, of course. She does very poorly in the presidential race. But as others have who ran for president and dropped out, Tulsi Gabbard decides that it is politically advantageous now to change parties, and she would go on later to endorse Donald Trump. Now, there are a lot of theories about this and the conversion of many other people from one party to another, or from strong opposition to Donald Trump to strong support for Donald Trump. I happen to think the historian Robert Caro has it right when he says generally of the phenomenon of power and the hunger for power, that power doesn't corrupt as much as it reveals. It doesn't always reveal us for our best, but it says a lot about who we are. Well, I think power has revealed a lot about Tulsi Gabbard. It's not that she had no fixed ideology, it's that her ideology is capable of great swings of opinion depending on which side of the grass is greener. So Tulsi Gabbard, as a reward for endorsing Donald Trump, gets nominated to be Director of National Intelligence. And the reaction was ecstatic in the Kremlin. So Kremlin newspapers are thrilled with her nomination. One of them writes, well, the FBI and CIA are going to be quaking in their boots. Yeah, I'm sure they were quaking in their boots. Another Kremlin spokesman close to Putin said this about Tulsi Gabbard. He described her as our girl. That's right, the Kremlin's girl had been nominated to be the Director of National Intelligence. There were undoubtedly corks popping in the Kremlin. If the reaction in the Kremlin was one of unrestrained jubilation, the reaction in Congress was very different. Of course, the Republicans did what they always do, that is, murmur concerns in public or in private, but eventually fall in line. And the result is that she is narrowly confirmed. And now, how is she doing as the Director of National Intelligence? And the answer is, in two simple words, just terrible. Let's take the Signalgate fiasco, the Signalgate controversy. She was, of course, on that infamous Signal chat discussing classified military strike plans for Houthis in Yemen. Here she is being questioned by Jack Reed, Senator Jack Reed, about what device she was using when she was using this unsecured app, commercial app on her phone.
Seized during any parts of these discussions?
Yes, Senator, I was.
Were you using your private phone or a public phone for the Signal discussions?
I won't speak to this because it's under review by the National Security Council. Once that review is complete, I'm sure we'll share the results with the committee.
What is under review? It's a very simple question. Are you your private phone or an officially issued phone? What could be under review?
National Security Council is reviewing all aspects of how this came to be, how the journalist was inadvertently added to the group chat, and what occurred within that chat across the board.
But so you are not going to disclose anything about whether you use the phone?
That's right, she wouldn't even acknowledge which phone she was using. Well, here she is being asked by Jason Crow in the House about where she was when she was receiving these messages.
Dr. Gabbard, you were also traveling during this discussion, correct?
Yes.
And where were you?
I was traveling through the Asia-Pacific region. I don't recall which country I was in at that time.
You don't remember the country?
I'd have to go back and look at the schedule.
Yep, she wouldn't acknowledge where she was either. But here's the thing, as the Director of National Intelligence, she is overseeing all of our intelligence agencies. Her primary responsibility, among others, is to make sure that our national security secrets are kept secret, that they're not discussed willy-nilly on commercial apps. And throughout that whole Signal chat, there isn't a single moment where Tulsi Gabbard states the obvious. Hey, folks, we shouldn't be discussing military strike plans on a commercial app. This is reckless in the extreme. She's plainly not doing her job, but probably the most serious malfeasance came with respect to a report of the National Intelligence Council. This is a council within the intelligence community that brings together analysts, produces the most objective product analyzing different issues. And the council produces a product about Tren de Aragua. This is that now infamous Venezuelan gang. And the conclusion of the National Intelligence Council is that the Venezuelan government is not directing the actions of this gang in the United States to the degree its members are in the United States. Now, this is significant because the Trump administration has been claiming as a justification for the due process-free deportations of Venezuelan gang members to that maximum security prison in El Salvador. They've been relying on the Alien Enemies Act of 1798. Now, the Alien Enemies Act, in order to use the provisions of that act for this expedited removal, requires that you be at war with another country or be invaded by that country. And the Trump administration has been claiming that the Venezuelan government has invaded the United States by directing the activities of this gang. So here's the top National Intelligence Council saying, no, that's not right. That's just not true. And so what happens? Tulsi Gabbard's chief of staff, Joe Kent, urges the council to rewrite its report so that it won't be used against the president or his policies. Okay, this is the last thing you want to see happen in the intelligence community. That is, instructions from the Director of National Intelligence or her staff to change the analytic product coming out of the intelligence community to suit the political whims or agenda of the president. Because if that is the message coming from the leadership of the intelligence community, then all the products of that community are going to be biased for the president's agenda, even when it imperils our national security. You're not going to get honest answers from the intelligence community. And indeed, what followed was even worse. Tulsi Gabbard fired the head of the National Intelligence Council and the deputy head of that council, sending a very clear message: you don't write the reports that we want to see, you're going to be fired. That makes her so patently unsuited for this position. And it means danger for the country, because we as policymakers cannot rely on the material that we're getting from the intelligence community if it's being politicized from the very top. Finally, there's this nugget. Tulsi Gabbard, realizing that the president doesn't read and won't read his daily presidential briefs, is looking into potentially bringing on a Fox News producer, getting them their intelligence community clearance, and having them produce product that the president will watch, because he can't be made to do his work as president.